Understanding the basic psychology of the dog you have in your house is quite important. So what the long line allows me to do is let the dog wander off, get a little bit more distracted, create a bit more space between me and the dog, so I can start to work on increasing the difficulty level for the dog, so the game's changing. You now have a bit more freedom, you're expected to come back to me from a further distance, and there's a little bit more distraction out there, so I'm expecting a little bit of a regression in his recall as I transition to this new level. Okay, so free, I'm gonna let him get distracted. He's very focused on the food, this little fella. And he's also very focused on the end of the long line. But that's okay. So these are these little hurdles that get thrown at us throughout the training process, and we just adapt to them, okay? So I don't get frustrated, I don't get flustered. I know that the dog wants to jump and chase the long line. I've got a goal of working on the recall, but in order to work on the recall, I've got to also make sure he's not jumping up at the long line. So I adapt as I need to. I adapt, I keep the goal in mind, but I stay cool, calm, and collected. I don't get frustrated. Off you go. Free, free. Free, free, free. So for this, I'm just going to make the long line as boring as possible. So whenever he starts jumping up at it, I just make it nice and boring. It's also an indication to me that the dog's craving a little bit of play. So I think about it as like basic needs that the dog has. So the dog's wanting, potentially has a desire to pick something up and shake it, which is part of the dog's predatory response. So it's perfectly natural for a dog. If this persists, rather than kind of constantly trying to punish the dog with whatever it may be, a verbal tone, a pop on the leash, a physical touch, I might fill the need. So I might actually play with the dog first and then do the recall training. So the need is fulfilled. He doesn't feel the need to pick up and shake the long line, and it means I can actually go on my journey. So the hurdle might be, he's craving play too much. That's causing me issues with the training. So I'll meet that need. By meeting that need, it actually makes the dog more trainable. But he's wandered off on his own anyway. Alrighty, off you go, free, free. So I let the dog get distracted. So you can see he already wants to follow me. Come. A little bit of leash tension. Yes. Mark and reward. So that was a good one, right? He got distracted. He didn't want to come back to me, so he ignored me. And then I guided him away on the leash. Come. Yes. Free. Come. Yes. Free. Come. Yes. Free. So you can see I've added a bit of distance. It's allowed the dog to get a little bit more distracted, which has made it a little bit more challenging for the dog. So I want to manage that, how challenging it is. So this is a good level for the dog. There's a lot of learning going on. There's a lot of good reps happening, but it's not too overwhelming. It's not like he's just hitting the end of the long line constantly. He's not too hard to control. That allows me to have him at a point where he's still able to learn, but it's not too overwhelming, okay? I don't want it too easy for him, and I don't want it too difficult. I want to find that nice sweet spot. Come. Yes. Free. So what you'll notice me do every now and again is I'll change when the marker happens. So sometimes I'll mark for the dog turning around. So come, I'll mark there, yes. And then other times I'll mark when the dog's already there. And I want to randomize this for the dog. So the dog doesn't think, oh, if I say come and he doesn't mark there, yes, I'm not going to get a treat, right? So when I start to mess with the schedule of reinforcement, so change how many reps I reinforce essentially, as I start to do that, sometimes you can get a massive drop off if you don't make it unpredictable for the dog prior to that. So what I'm saying is before I start to thin out the reinforcement schedule and make the dog work harder for the food in terms of reinforcing not every rep, maybe every second or third rep, I want to start reinforcing the dog at my feet, so marking for the dog coming right back rather than turning around. And that will stop me from, when I transition, it will stop the dog from having these like lulls. So you'll find if you don't do that, you'll find the dog starts to pick up, like if they don't mark at that point when I turn around, I'm not going to get a treat, so I'm not going to come back. So we don't want the dog to start picking up patterns of how it can access the food and avoid listening to us essentially. So the dogs aren't dumb and they'll pick up patterns. Initially, when I'm teaching a new skill, I want it to be very, very predictable. But as the dog does better, I want to make it unpredictable in terms of how the dog can access the reinforcer. So, and by doing that, it will mean the dog will work harder for longer periods. It's exactly like a pokey machine. So if you're sitting there, someone plays on the pokies too much, they're sitting there pressing the button, and they randomly get these wins. The algorithm is what's keeping them playing. So the fact they don't know when the win's going to happen is what keeps them hooked on the machine. So we essentially become a pokey machine for the dog, and we want the dog to not really know when the pokey machine's going to play, but it knows the buttons it can press in order to get the pokey machine to play. Free. Free. Come. Yes. Free. You also notice every time I mark, I only go into the treat pouch after I've marked. So I'll say, come, yes, and then I go to the treat pouch. So it's not, there's a slight gap, at least maybe like even a second gap between me saying yes and the dog, me going into my treat pouch. Come. Yes. Free. Come. Yes. Come. Yes. Free. Come. Good. Yes. So that was me changing the markers there. So I was marking for the dog marking with the word yes when the dog got to me rather than when the dog turned around. I used my continuous marker, which is good. Come, good. Yes. That creates a chain of behaviors. So it allows me to mark moments the dog's done the correct thing, but it doesn't necessarily mean the dog's completed what I want it to do. Come. Good. Sit. Good. Yes. Free. Yes. Very happy. Sit. Good. Free. Free. Yes. Sit. Good. Free. Good. Free. Come. Yes. Free. 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 Come. Good. Sit. Good. Free. So this is me changing the schedule of reinforcers. So I'm missing a rep every so often. Come. Yes. So I might miss 1 out of 4, right? So I'll do 4 reps, 1 of those I'll miss, and a random one of those. So it's not predictable as to what one's gonna be missed. So the ratio's changed. It's free. I also, as I'm training, want to be aware of what the dog's triggered by. So this dog's quite triggered by noise. So every time I hear one of my other dogs bark in the background there, he kind of becomes alert. So I just want to take note of that. Come. Yes. Free. Come. Yes. Sit. Good. Free. Come. Yes. Sit. Good. Yes. Sit. Good. Free. I want my tone of voice to be engaging for the dog. I'm boring in the sense of I'm standing still, but the dog's quite an active dog, so it's eager to please. So I don't need to add too much enthusiasm. However, if you even notice in my tone of voice, there's a bit of like pizzazz to it, I would say, a bit of enthusiasm there. Good. Sit. Yes. Like I'm not talking to the dog. I'm not just like, good, sit, good, down, good. Like there's emphasis on the commands. Come. Yes. Sit. Good. Free. Come. Sit. Free. So that was the 1 and 4. The 1 and 4 that I don't reinforce. Come. Yes. So you can see how slowly I thin out the reinforcement. It's not super fast. Like this is only the first session. It's quite a long session actually. The dog's still going. But I thin it out very slowly, and then I'll go from like 1 and 4 to 2 and 4. Or it might be 2 and 5, you know? So it thins out very gradually. So it's not the dog isn't aware of it. I don't want to make it too big of a jump that the dog becomes too aware of it. Come. Yes. Sit. Good. Free. Come. Yes. Sit. Good. Free. And we're probably going to stop here. So what I like to do is finish off a session by letting the dog have a bit of time to explore, have a sniff around. I might even play with the dog at the end of the session. I tend to find playing with the dog at the end of the session, the dog's generally calmer at the end of the session, so it's worked for that big reward at the end. So the dog learns to work for me for longer periods. I specialize in coaching people to train dogs. So I've been a dog trainer for 10 years, and I have done a lot of work on creating systems and creating the right approach for each individual, so adapting to humans to train them to train dogs. If that's something someone might be interested in, let me know. I do offer like online coaching, I offer in-person coaching, I offer feedback systems. So I tend to find one of the biggest things with dog training is you need constant feedback. So you need to film yourself and then have someone give you proper feedback on that. These are all things that I offer. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know. Reach out to us at one of our email addresses, and someone will point you in the right direction.